slot of the day, which is a panel. And the title is How to Get a Job as a Ruby Developer. And with me here are Iratxe, who suggested this panel. Iratxe is a teacher at Le Wagon. Then we have Tobias with us. Tobias is a CEO of a small consultancy called Wolkenwerk. Then next to me is Eileen, that you've already seen and probably know. And then we have with us Kaya, who is a senior Ruby developer looking for a job. And so I asked Kaya how she wants to be introduced, so that is was okay. So, Iratxe, what was your reason to propose this session?
Is this working? Oh yeah, now it's working. So my reason was that I've been in cybersecurity for 7 years, so I got to the senior position. And now I got a bit sick of breaking apps. I want to build them. So I went into Ruby because I did my bachelor thesis many years ago in Ruby on Rails. And I was like, okay, let's give this a chance again. And I really like the language, way more than other programming languages I've used. But I've started applying for jobs, and I got so many no's that I got very discouraged, and then I was, okay, so where do I fit? Because I don't feel like I'm a junior anymore. I have some coding experience, but just not super, like a lot of experience specifically in Ruby, and I wanna know how to first get better, like what, detail tips that people can give me, like, okay, get better at testing or get better at this, and also how to crack the interviews, the technical part of the interviews, because the rest, I'm okay, but in the technical, I'm like, not that good. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe that's a good question for Eileen. How to get better at Ruby? So what would you recommend? What areas should you have to look into? So,
I mean, I'm also bad at technical interviews. I hate them.
Perfect.
There's nothing that makes me sweat more than some dude watching me code when I already know how to do it. And also because they always it's a pairing interview, and you're like, this isn't pairing because you already know the fucking answer. Yeah. Sorry. Can you tell I don't like them? The interviews.
Yeah.
But well, I guess are they pairing interviews, or are they someone watching you code, or are they apps that you were supposed to build a feature into? Both?
Yeah.
Which one do you feel like?
Oh, the worst one is when they're like, oh, code, and then there's three people looking at me, and I'm like,
Yeah, I don't I don't know how to get better at those other than maybe ask people to watch you code and practice that. But yeah, so what I would do is I would build an app on the side and deploy it and add features to it, and ask sometimes if you can trade that as your technical interview.
Oh, okay.
And make sure that you do really good Git commit history, and it's really clean code that's well documented. So, and do it in public, on GitHub as open source, so that everyone can see. Yeah. And that's how I've done some technical interviews where I've swapped that out. You'd think after working on Rails for 10 years in public that I wouldn't have to jump through the pairing interview hoops, but I did at Shopify, and it sucked. But I did it. And a lot of times in those pairing interviews, they'll let you use documentation, but they might not say it. So ask if you can I use documentation? Because nobody codes without documentation in Google.
Yeah, I know. That's why I find this interview so stressing, because that's not how I code. I know.
So I would admit, I would ask for changing things about the interview and see if that helps, and then, I don't know, practice coding in front of people, but getting your own getting your own app up and running that you can use as an example, I think is probably the best way, because then you're also you're have practical coding experience, and whatnot. You can show your other skills at the same time.
Yeah, good. Thanks. Yeah.
Kaya, what are your recommendations? And maybe also focus on how to get better at Ruby. I thought that understood that was also one of the questions, in general, not only and with regards to the interviews?
Yeah, I mean, for me, these technical interviews are also very nerve-wracking. I think what helped me was like pairing a lot and having someone actually watch me code. I think one good initiative that I would recommend, especially to people who feel like they're more junior in Ruby, would be I think it's called My First Ruby Friend or My Ruby Friend from Andy Kroll. It's like a mentoring program. I used to mentor there, and with my mentee, it was like just pairing sessions on Ruby problems. And I think it's a really good start to, because it's like a low barrier entry to kind of having someone watch you code who's well-meaning and not expecting like high performance or anything. Plus you can pick fun challenges like from the advent of code or something like that. So you can actually enjoy it. And I also think in general it's good to have like a lot of community events. I don't know, for example, in Berlin we have these. So I would also recommend to go to the user groups and just meet with people and talk to them about these things. And put yourself out there. Maybe also through contacts you can get a job.
Yeah.
And I think it's just that I sometimes struggle giving out nice advice because I feel like back in 2016, 17, when I was junior in Ruby, the world looked a bit different, and I was kind of privileged in a way that there was a lot of help from the community back then. So we had the Rails Girls Berlin being very active, and we had the Rails Girls Summer of Code, which I participated in, and that was like a really good trajectory into the career back then. Because before that, I had done a boot camp, I had my portfolio and everything, and I applied for junior jobs, and people were saying, "Yeah, but you don't have work experience, so we don't want to employ you." And I was like, "Yeah, but you want to pay me a junior salary, and you require work experience. What is this?" So when I then participated in the Rails Girls Summer of Code, it was like a 3-month scholarship program where me and another team member were coding on a feature for discourse with mentors and a whole like coaching company supporting us, and we got paid to do that.
Oh, nice.
So we would output open source code that was public and visible. Like Eileen said, this is like really important that you produce code that people can actually see and where they can see like the Git history and see that your Git commit messages actually make sense, and you're not just like, oh, another bug fix, But then, yeah, exactly. So in my case, I felt like, cool, I'm doing like what I call the like classic Rails Girls career start, right? So I did the Rails Girls Beginners Workshop, the Code and Cakes, which are like hackathons but with cake. The Rails Girls Summer of Code, and then the coaching company where I did the Summer of Code. I was really pushing them every day, like saying like, "Hey, wouldn't it be cool if I work here afterwards? Don't you want to employ me? Look how cool I am." And at the end they gave in and they were like, "Okay." So that's how I got my first job. And then now when juniors approach me and ask me like, "How do I get my first job?" I have to tell them, "Look, I was super privileged back then. There was the Travis Foundation actually paying for the scholarship program, but it was shut down. So since it was shut down, there's not this program anymore. And so now you have to look for things like this Ruby Friend program. And this actually also shout out to people here, like if you have any idea how we can set this up again, something like the Summer of Code, please let me know, because I think this is what we need.
So maybe we can ask Tobias, who's also in the position to hire junior or
Yeah.
juniors, but also developers in general. What are you looking for when you hire a person? Can you give any tips for the recruiting?
Yeah, I'll try to. So basically, I'm not an HR manager, so hiring is not my full role. But yes, I do run technical interviews, and first of all, I'm not super experienced in that, so you have to understand that I am nervous running a technical interview as well. That's very important, yeah? So we're all people, we're all humans, and we're in this together. Honestly. And, I don't know about, of course, I have different expectations hiring a junior and hiring a senior developer. I would always run over pre-existing code with a junior developer. I personally would not expect someone to sit with me and do anything live in that interview. So I would ask, can you bring some code that you have written before? It doesn't need to be Ruby, it can be anything. And then I would like to have a discussion on that code. How did it came? What is the problem that solved it? And yeah, I do expect some kind of understanding of the things you have done yourself, and some kind of knowledge of your own. What is my role in this? Why did I do this like this? What is the boundaries of my knowledge there? Yeah, so that would be how I approach that usually. So if I have a senior there, then we can go deeper, and I would really love to have a discussion that is fruitful for both sides with a senior developer. So if I start and dig in, why did you use that pattern and so, and I cannot see that someone has been practicing software design patterns before, that would be a problem for me for a senior role.
And what stands out in applications? So when do you say an application is really good? I would invite that person when you look for Ruby developers.
I cannot say. I'm not hiring the code that was written. I have not been part in that process. I always hire people. So of course we need a personal connection, which is not really part of the technical interview. But in the technical interview, I'm looking for how do you approach problems? How do you respond to questions? Something like that. So I'm not searching for knowledge or anything, but I expect someone to be able to reflect on their own work. Yeah, so that is important for me. And besides that, the dedication to the language is for me the most important thing. So if I see that someone wants to do that and someone wants to learn, that is the most important thing at all.
Yeah, I also want to give like some actually nicer examples of technical interviews where I, as a interviewer, as a applicant, was feeling actually enjoying them. One example was, I think it was it was for WeTransfer. They had this technical interview where they would give me like a little homework. That was fun because it was actually just a bunch of tests and I had to make them pass. And then I would come into a session with one of their engineers with my solution, and he was just asking me questions like, so if I would want to expand this to do this and that as well, how would you refactor the code so it actually fits my new requirements? And I was pairing with him on the problem or giving my thoughts to that. And that was actually fun and enjoyable because it was like a more like real life situation, but boiled down to a very small specific problem. Like the code was just one Ruby class with maybe 5 methods or something, or less, I don't know. Pretty straightforward, and it was super fun, and it was also like more like a real life situation where I felt like, yeah, this is the thing, right? You want you want to work on something that you actually want to make work, but then also someone else is coming with new requirements, and then how would you actually respond to the problem. And I really enjoyed that technical interview. I was actually forgetting that it's an interview. I was just like like into the thing at the moment that I was like sad when it was over. I was no, can we just keep on working on this? And the other one was at a smaller startup called Leafery that is not existing anymore. And I don't know if you hear Irmela, but Irmela was there interviewing me as a tech lead, and she the other interviews made like a super micro problem. I think it was just like a string manipulation problem, and they were like making sure to create a very safe environment, which was really nice by like saying, we understand that you're nervous. If you are feeling too nervous, you can stop at any time and take a break. We're nervous too. You're not alone in this. You can look up everything online. You can use your computer. You can ask any question. You can say, oh, I'm blanking right now because I'm too nervous. It's all fine. Like, so this was the first step that I really liked, where I felt like, okay, they understand the severity of the situation for me, right? So the safe environment helped to get my nerves back. And then also it was nice, like this super micro problem, but you could actually already show, right? Because I was like, yeah, I'm gonna impress them by writing a test first, you know? So you can actually already show like some of your approaches that you have with the smallest problem, and it doesn't need to be a big thing, no? It doesn't need to be, oh, you need to write a whole app that does this, and you know, it's just like one string manipulation thingy. That's it. And I think these were like two very good examples for like, if you are looking for good examples.
Thank you. Yeah.
Which I really enjoyed.
So a lot of inspiration and tips for improving the hiring process and improving like the interview situations. So it's less of a struggle in the interview situation.
Yeah, but I also wanted to know, like, right now I feel confident, like, okay, I create an app and like I know how to do a lot of things, but what's the next step? Like because I Google and I'm like, okay, how to get better in Ruby, and there's like millions of results. So I want to know, okay, I have limited time. So what should I focus my energy on? What should I learn next? Because I know tests is already like top one on my list. But after that, like what is a skill in Ruby or Rails that I would need to like, yeah, impress the interviewer, you know?
Yeah, from my perspective, it's refactoring.
Okay.
Start to learn refactoring, and I think that's not the next step. That's also the last step, because you can always improve on refactoring, object-oriented design, and then you can, yeah, of course, you can move on and on and on to systems design and architectural design later on. But yeah, like after you are confident with Ruby, you start improving the design of the code you have written. Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Oh, sorry.
I thought maybe we hear Eileen as the Rails expert in this round. What would you recommend?
Yeah, I think refactoring is good, but also getting some expertise in a specific area, like performance or something. But like you already have the security background, so highlight that in your interviewing. It's a lot of people don't know how to do security right, so like it's really easy to mess it up. And like Rails does a lot to help you, but like there's not a lot of people on your teams that are going to know how XSS works or CSRF. What, I don't know, just all the security stuff. I don't know that I would focus on testing, because tests should be your least complex code in your code base.
Okay.
Your tests should be simple. Like if your code is clean, your tests are clean. But if your code is shit, your tests are shit. Usually.
But you assume that testing is like you do it like is the must.
Yeah,
it's like the basics.
Do it. Yeah, it's like part of the basics. But like, if someone was like, "Oh, I'm really good at testing," I'd be like, "Oh, okay, that's fine." But like, can you make this code better, rather than can you write good tests? Because like, if you're refactoring, like you should just rely on the tests that already exist. You shouldn't have to write new tests, because they should all just still pass. And I don't know, this is an unpopular opinion, but I don't believe in TDD.
Okay.
Like, I think you should write tests, but I think sometimes people get so obsessed with test, like fail, code pass, fail, that they don't write good code. So like, your code needs to be readable, well refactored, not too complex and fast before you're like, then like you can write tests at the same time, but it's the obsession with the tests that ends up with people being like, well, I don't like the test passed, so like my Ruby code is fine. You're like, I can't read that. I don't care if the test passed. I can't read it. So I think that like being able to write really clean Ruby and actually knowing how the language wants Ruby to be written is more important than being a testing expert. Because I mean, what's the first thing that AI is going to take from us? It's tests. So
Yeah,
hopefully.
I would like to say. I would like to add to that that since we've heard like clean code and design, good design, I think there can be a lot of opinions out there what that actually means. But I recommend doing the 99 bottles of object-oriented
I'm already
programming.
reading that, yeah.
That's like a good start where you can actually get an example of what that actually means, design or clean code or something. Is always a good way to start. But then also, of course, you know, there are flavors in Ruby as well, and you will always find like very opinionated guys that are refactoring. Yeah. So beware that you don't dissolve into like the, you know, because I think sometimes it's really difficult to, especially when you have someone very dominant and opinionated in the team. And
I've worked with plenty of developers.
yeah,
Yeah.
So you know what I mean,
I'm
right?
the security person that comes and tells them, yeah, it works, but it's not secure, so please change it. And they're like, no, but it works. And I'm like, yeah, but...
Yeah, and it's the same with refactoring. So I think that like sometimes you need to always also set boundaries there and say like, look, I know that you have a flavor and a style, but like I don't agree, and I think I'm gonna write it this way because this is good design in my opinion, and like learn also to build a confidence there, and I think then you're good.
Yeah. Yeah, good tips.
Good tips.
I don't know how easy they're gonna be to implement, but yeah.
Yeah, are there any questions left or something that you'd like to ask
No, I
in the
don't
round?
I think I have enough to do for the first next months or weeks.
Yeah, maybe also don't only apply for explicitly junior title jobs, but just any kind of
Ruby
Ruby
I'm doing
job.
that already. Yeah.
And maybe I wonder, like, what companies are hiring juniors, or where is it? Are there companies where it's more likely to get hired? Does it depend on the size, or what's your experience with that?
I don't know about that part, but I have a suggestion. If you have junior developer written anywhere, like on your Twitter bio, delete it.
I don't have
All
Twitter.
of you, delete it.
So
They're like, you don't need to cut yourself down in the interview process. Like, they can figure out what your skill level is. You don't need to tell them ahead of time. It's not tricking people. Like, if you tell someone I'm junior, they're going to treat you like you are, even if you're not. So I don't.
No.
If you're not doing that, that's good for everyone else in the room who's, you know, go in with confidence. There's no reason to like tell them that you're a lower level than you are. What was the original question before?
I was wondering if it's more, if it's for some
hiring?
companies, it's more likely that they hire juniors because, yeah, I don't know.
I
Are there
think
many-
like larger companies
Yeah, I
are
could
more
agree.
likely to. The thing is, you can also use that security angle to get in on like get into the security team of a company that uses Ruby.
Yeah,
And then transfer.
I almost got a job at GitLab doing that. Yeah. But the technical interview, no.
Okay. Yeah, maybe we can. Can I use your microphone? Sorry.
I just had a question for Iratxe. So, what kind of open source stuff would you want to contribute to? Like, what's your dream? I want to be able to do this somewhere. So why don't I start with open source? So an open source project that would be cool is.
I don't know. Yeah.
I would recommend one. Find it. I'd recommend.
Yeah. Okay.
Open source is awesome.
Yeah. I know. Yeah.
Okay.
But I've never contributed to open source, but I've been in communities, forums, and stuff like that. But I've never actually pushed code. So yeah, maybe that's a good idea. Yeah.
So circling back to the beginning, to Eileen's suggestion to really like create code publicly,
And
make
very
it
detailed
like,
commits that make sense. Yeah.
like a good Git commit history.
Yeah, the Git commit
tests
history
probably.
is way underrated.
Yeah.
You should see the way people write commit messages at big companies. It's insane. Like, that commit should not be fix it. Like, what does that mean? Doesn't mean anything to me. Makes me crazy.
Yeah.
And it was the worst at GitHub, too. Terrible commit messages.
Wow. Okay, so
Now we're roasting big companies. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, like code publicly. Good
commit
good commits. Testing is mandatory, not necessarily TDD, but
yeah.
like there should be tests.
Don't be like, the thing is, people are too prescriptive, right? They're like, they told me to do TDD, so I'm going to do it. And then, like, you can't be creative, or you, like, feel like you're locked into that, or, like, I don't know, other design patterns where people get, like, really, really obsessed with it. Even, like, even Sandy Metz stuff, sometimes people read the book, and then they're like, I have to code this way. And it's like, that's not the intention. It's not, like, do it this way always or you're bad. It's like, here's an idea, think about this when you're doing stuff. But like when you get too prescriptive, like your code code stops being fun.
No.
Don't get too dogmatic. Would be
Yeah.
the, like the idea
Not
of all
right.
advice.
I would second that. But the thing is, you need. I think it's important to kind of learn these patterns and to familiarize yourself with it, and then after you have understood why they exist and the reasons they are for that, then you can forget about that again. Yeah, because then it's automatic. You will automatically apply the right pattern. But this is the senior level, in my opinion. Yeah.
Okay, good to know. Yeah,
Okay.
I think I'm all set. Yeah.
You're all set. Okay.
So
thank
people
you.
hire juniors,
Yeah.
and hire them in pairs, as Andy Kroll suggests, that you have 2 juniors in a team, they can help each other out.
And suffer together.
Okay. Thank you.